And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk from the Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Indianapolis, Indiana. Michigan State 86-77 upset victory over number 4 ranked Kentucky in the Champions Classic. Michigan State coming back strong from that near victory against Gonzaga out in San Diego. Followed it up with a gutty, gritty, clutch performance. Michigan State, big win. Izzo, emotional after the game. November's not supposed to be this entertaining, Paul. Usually I used to say what happens in November stays in November, but this one, we learned a lot about this team, and it's going to carry on. I was impressed. Everybody was. Amazing performance.
There's a few things. Like sometimes Michigan State does win these games in November. We've seen them do this against Kentucky when Keith Appling, that team, and Adrian Payne and those guys. And I think that if they hadn't had injuries at the end of the year, that team would have been pretty dang good, that Denzel Valentine team. And then we've seen a couple of years ago where Michigan State beat Duke in this thing, and neither team were very good. But this is different because I think of the way the two teams are comprised. I think Izzo's looking at Kentucky in terms of what that Kentucky team can be and will be.
Yes.
When he talks about, people are going to be like, he was just overplaying Lou Holtz on the opponent. No, he's not. He sees what this Kentucky team can do. I will counter with, I think this Kentucky team is really good as is right now. Even with Sheboy coming off the shelf, I was amazed at how well Michigan State played perimeter defense in this game, and there weren't a lot of open threes. And we've seen in games like this where elite athletes get open threes and they make them at inopportune times for Michigan State, where a game that might be a narrow Michigan State lead turns into a 7-point deficit. And I expected it at times. So Michigan State had to answer every single time. This thing never got more than 5 points in Kentucky's favor. When Michigan State ran their stuff, when they didn't play hero ball, when they ran their offense, when they played good defense with good communication, they were the better team. And it took until maybe the second overtime for the thing to just break Michigan State's way. But I felt like Michigan State was kind of getting in their own way at a few times. Like Hogard was making some mistakes, and a couple other guys were. But when Michigan State played good basketball, good team conceptual basketball, they were the better team tonight, and it was very impressive because this is a good Kentucky team. This is an athletic Kentucky team. And I was wondering, well, what's Malik Hall going to look like at the 3? Is he going to get used in this game? No, he didn't. What's Joey Hauser going to look like at the 4? Is he going to foul out in this game? Is he going to get used because of the great athletes? No, he didn't. He played great defense. In addition to shooting great, rebounding great, and doing everything, shooting free throws great. And I told you, I leaned over with 10 minutes to go. I'm like, Joey Hauser's playing his tail off. I don't know if he can play any harder. I don't know if he can last playing this hard. And he did. Not only the rest of regulation, but the 2 overtimes. It was amazing tonight. And I really think this is validation for Izzo to some extent. Not adding pieces, not bringing in more scholarship guys. And he likes his guards. And these guys this is the best defensive collection of guard play that I've seen from Michigan State this time of year for as long as I've been covering them. And, Tyson Walker was brilliant on defense at times against Shavir Wheeler. And that kid's good. And A.J. Hogard played really good defense. I thought Jaden Akins took a huge step forward tonight in a lot of ways, rebounding defense. And this is a really, really good win for Michigan State against a really, really good Kentucky team. And Kentucky wanted to win this game. Sure.
And Izzo was emotional after this game, not only at the podium but off podium, because of those things you talked about the transfers. Izzo heard the criticism. Izzo knew he had a decision. He could go out and try to sprinkle in some transfers to his team and solidify things and fortify things. But he's told us, he's told media, he's told the public, he's told the media, he's told public. That's just not the way he wants to do it. Now, long term, might they change that a little bit? I mean, they do have Tyson Walker on this team. They do have Joey Hauser on this team.
Joey Hauser and Tyson Walker, those are transfers. What he's talking about is not throwing out the bathwater with a baby after a year. He's talking about letting guys develop. He's got transfers. We've seen him go after Aaron Harris. We've seen him go after lots of different guys over the years. What he's talking about is not just giving up on guys if the transfer doesn't work out immediately and then going to the next guys. He's talking about doing it the Michigan State way, which is pushing, prodding, forcing those guys to develop if they want to, and if they're on board, he's going to stick with them. But it's not saying I'm not going to get transfers. It's saying I'm going to develop guys to the best of my ability, and if they're still not good enough, then we'll see what happens. But he knew that these guys were going to be good enough, and they've surpassed his expectations. And to some degree, I know they have with like a guy like Mady Sissoko. I knew Izzo thought Mady was going to be much better this year. He didn't realize maybe how fast and how good he would get, and how steep the rate of improvement is with a little bit of confidence. And it's hard to see because sometimes, as well as I do with big guys, like it's incremental, and then all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, where'd this guy come from?
Yeah, when Max Christie and Julius Marble left and they were down to 9 scholarship players, that's when Izzo had a chance to go to the portal and decided not to. Now they went and got Carson Cooper late as a scholarship freshman, but Izzo knew that he took some criticism for that. He's aware of what people are saying about it. It didn't make sense to have such a thin roster and to rely on someone like Sissoko who really didn't make to the naked eye didn't make a whole lot of progress in year 1 and year 2. To stick with him and bring back Hauser, Izzo was very thankful to see those guys for them. He was thankful for them. He was emotional because he saw quotes, where some of those players said, hey, coach stuck with me instead of going out and getting somebody else. And the players rallied around Sissoko knowing that Izzo was putting his chips in the table for Sissoko and for Sissoko to round into a player the way he has is making Izzo look really smart right now. Sissoko's loving it. His teammates are loving it. The Sissoko's loving it. And it's a very tight group right now, and as long as they stay healthy, Izzo's going to have a lot of fun coaching this team. Now, they've won some games in November before, but they've not come into this thing unranked before and beaten a top 5 team like this. And doing it under these circumstances with some players doing things that 2 months ago we might not have expected these things from Sissoko. Those of you that watched him in the summer and, he kind of struggled in Moneyball a little bit. And I wrote, man, he's not making much progress. And then when practice started, I came back to the Final Four message board and I walked it back. I said, he's looking good in practice. And the only thing I can tell you is that this summer, when a lot of you Michigan State basketball fans saw him this summer also, you saw him after weight training and 2 practices. And sometimes a big man like that can't go a third time later at night. And I was like, man, he's looking good. And I needed to see it in games, and we saw it against Grand Valley and we saw it against Gonzaga. It's for real. The guy he's a big guy that's got all kinds of length, and he's got footwork, and he can play with a low base. And he showed against Shibwe, the best player in the country, that he could get a lower base and stay low and stay strong. And he was hard to move off the block, and he was hard to shoot over. Early in the game, he just went high, and they did the Drew Namick, and he missed over him one time. And then late in regulation, when Shibwe faced up and just shot what Tom Crean would call a fatigue shot. Remember that with about a minute and a half left and just shot a fatigue shot over him, missed it. Shibwe's going to be great. Shibwe was not at his best tonight, but Sissoko going against Timmy and Shibwe back-to-back. There's a new bona fide Big Ten center in the conference, and his name is Mady Sissoko, and he was big tonight.
The cool thing for Michigan State was his free throw shooting. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys that were really, really good big guys. Even guys like Xavier Tillman, even like guys like Nick Ward, that were pretty decent free throw shooters as time evolved. But to be able to do that and shoot free throws with the kind of confidence that he did late in the game when he played as many minutes as he did and expended as much energy, I mean, he's running the floor. That's one of the other things we talked about. Can he run the floor? And we saw that tonight. So there's like all these different things that he keeps on showing us. And I like the way that it's not just him against Oscar Shibwe. When he got a different kind of big on him, after Shibwe fouled out, he made the adjustments to how that guy was playing, and he kind of he had a good feel for playing against that guy, and we went and took the ball a few times. I mean, we've seen really good Michigan State bigs struggle against in some of these matchups, early season matchups against this kind of length. Really impressive. I mean, one of the first things I look for, and every time Michigan State plays in this thing, is how is Michigan State going to handle length, and I was really curious to see that. This year, because Kentucky does have some good defensive players. They have some really good length. But, Tyson Walker, he played better than I expected him to play. A.J. Hogard did some good things in this game. He's kind of infuriating because he does some bad things as well, and some selfish things.
Yeah, Izzo was not happy with Hogard, not personally, but wanting to correct it. That Hogard a few times drove for his own shot a couple times, and one time, like you said, didn't give it to Hall in time. He was not facilitating on time, and Izzo was trying to break him of that habit late last year, and they made progress with it. They had some relapses tonight. Hogard, ends up 1 out of 7 from the field, 9 assists, 5 turnovers. Izzo would have liked it for him to have about 11 or 12 assists today, and they'll go over the film and they'll try to get that ironed out again. It's been an issue in the past, and it was an issue tonight, but Michigan State overcame it.
I think the one thing that bothered me is, I know Hogard's going to do some of the muscle ball stuff, and you can't do that against Kentucky because not only do they have length, it's not like they're playing against like those old Memphis teams that like the Josh whatever Pastner Memphis teams where they're like out of phase and they're long and athletic, but you're just going to drive them, shot fake and go up and under. These guys play good position defense. In Kentucky, there are some times out there today. Another impressive thing that impressed me is Kentucky really ratcheted up the defense on a number of occasions where they just brought it to another level, and Michigan State was able to adjust to that and survive it, and then run their stuff. But the play that bothered me the most was Hogard had it on the perimeter. He decided to do some and one dribble type stuff when Malik Hall's wide open in the corner. He eventually gets the ball to him, but he got it to him in a bad spot to shoot with a closeout already happening, and Malik Hall didn't make the shot. That would have been a 10th assist for A.J. Hogard, and I think he needs to get to the point. He needs to get to the point where he values assists more than he values, okay, now we're doing well, I need to get my 10 points. I think he's got that thing in his head where I've got to show what I can do. The NBA scouts that are here, they're more impressed with your assists.
Yeah, and you hear about that with, the great players. Even Draymond Green would rather make a great pass than a great shot. Magic would rather make a great pass than a great shot. Hogard's not there. I don't know if he ever can rewire himself that way, but he can't. He's got to choose his battles on some of those, and that'll be something that they'll continue to work on. With Sissoko, his ability to play ball screen defense, he's a big man with great length, and his lateral movement, he moves like a 6'5" wing, a muscle wing. His lateral movement on the ball screen stuff is so good, and he's so wide on those, and he sets good ball screens. And, the battling in the low post, all those things. And there was a play late in the game, I think, late in the second overtime, when Kentucky was down, 4 or 6, and it was getting away from him. And Kentucky ran a play where Wheeler ended up looking to drive baseline to the left, and Sissoko switched out onto him and cut Wheeler off. Some IQ in there with all that physical ability and quickness and well-proportioned musculature. Mady Sissoko is a force on defense. And what he's doing with the screen roll game, they had a lot of success with screen roll game in the first half against Gonzaga. And then, then he had foul trouble. This game, they came out running some screen roll game. Kentucky was collapsing on it when Kentucky had a 7-point lead early. Now, most of the game, it never got bigger than 5, but they were up by 12-5 early in the game. Michigan State was on the ropes a little bit, and Michigan State hit consecutive three-pointers. Tyson Walker, Joey Hauser. On both of those, screen roll action, Sissoko down the lane. Kentucky collapses in over here. Walker, three-pointer. Over here to Hauser, three-pointer. They take a 21-20 lead based on the attention that Sissoko was drawing as a roll man. Not scoring, but drawing attention for three-pointers out there. That's beautiful stuff.
Yeah, this is a great environment, too, with this being in Indianapolis. There are so many Kentucky fans, so many Michigan State fans. Of course, there's going to be Duke and Kansas fans. Just Duke fans all around Indianapolis, I'm sure, and, wherever. But this is a really, really good environment. This is a crowd that was very, very appreciative of that first game because, frankly, we haven't had too many games like that, since the end of COVID. It's good to see these type of games, and this type of year. This felt like championship basketball. Now, both these teams have a lot to work on. There's no doubt about that, and they have to get a lot better. But this is really, for this time of year, this is really, really good basketball.
And I tell you what, college basketball is blasting off right now, and people like Scott Van Pelt are going to look at this and say, when he does his little show on ESPN, he's going to look at this and he's going to say, wait a minute, why wasn't Michigan State ranked? They just took Gonzaga 15 rounds. They're up 12 points in the second half. And they just beat Kentucky, number 4 ranked. They played top 5 teams. It's not even Thanksgiving yet, and it's coached by Tom Izzo. Now, we all know that Michigan State had a lot to replace, and they were relying on a lot of players that I'm not going to say were unproven, but had a long way to go. But Izzo and the job that these players did in the offseason, and then Izzo and his staff with some X's and O's to bring it home in this game. I mean, that play for the dunk to force the second overtime, I think it was, going the length of the court in 7 minutes or 7 seconds.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Izzo's coached, 900 games, 800 games? We've all seen him coach 800 games. And that play against the press, when you throw it, before you inbound it, you throw it down the baseline. I've got a pretty good memory. My memory's not as good as it used to be. But, that's a play that's been run. I mean, Digger Phelps used to run that. It was a little more prevalent in the 70s and 80s. I haven't seen it in a long time. Here and there you'll see it. I've never seen Michigan State run it. I've never seen Tom Izzo run that play. And whether Wojcik or Montgomery had a hand in it, Izzo says, hey, I'm reinventing myself a little bit. But he drew one up there, down by 2. They're going to try to deny Hogard before he inbound. You guys saw the play. Walker gives it to Hogard and goes deep, like a deep post pattern. And Hauser was supposed to set a down screen for him. But Hauser slipped and didn't get the screen set. That's what Izzo meant when he said the play almost didn't work. But that was a great pass. And then you saw the rest get into Malik Hall for the dunk. That was an X's and O's gem that even if you're Kentucky, you could never have prepared for that because Izzo's never ran that play. And you save that for overtime? I mean, right. you might go out of here without that play. You'll use it later in the season. But not only was Michigan State great, but the people that were here, Duke and Kansas, and some of the stuff was so good, even the Duke fans had to cheer. But they saw classic Tom Izzo tonight. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, the thing is, it almost didn't work in 2 ways. That pass was so close to being tipped. I mean, It was right over. I mean, it was right over. Kentucky does have great length on defense, but it was almost a reaction type, fingernail type tip. It may have gotten tipped into Walker's hands, but to his credit, man, it was an amazing play. And then he found his guy. And so I was talking about AJ Hogard and the things that kind of bother me about him. That's an example of brilliance on his part with his ability to pass. And that's, I think, the frustrating thing when you're Tom Izzo. Hogard sees the floor so well.
Yeah, he
does.
He
makes
does.
Incredible passes.
Yes, he does.
So when he doesn't find a guy that's open,
and he sees him. He sees him.
Yeah,
because he's got great vision. He's shown that.
You can't be like, oh, I didn't see you, bro. No, I mean that's the thing. We talk about Mady Sissoko. One of the best things about it was that the whole offseason we were talking about Carson Cooper, Jackson Kohler having to play. How big a role can they play? Michigan State needs Jackson Kohler to play 20 minutes a game. Well, today both those guys combined for 14 minutes. And probably a good thing for them. I mean, I thought Jackson Kohler scrapped out there and he played hard and he had a couple good rebounds.
Think about his baptism.
Yeah, and Cooper, he went out there and he played hard. He did his best. This is not easy, especially against a fresh version of Oscar Tshiebwe. And those guys did their part. But it's nice that the veteran guys, dudes like Malik Hall, Joey Hauser, did their part. And Jaden Akins, man. Izzo was talking about how good this Kentucky team is at rebounding the basketball and how he needed Jaden Akins to contribute as a rebounder. If I'm not mistaken, Jaden Akins had 6 or 7 rebounds in this game.
7.
7 rebounds.
That's what they needed.
And I did not think – this is one of the more rare things from the Champions Classic. I can't remember the last time we went into one of these deals and Michigan State out-rebounded one of these teams in this event. They always come in hell bent for leather against Michigan State, ready to rebound. And when they play Kentucky, especially, they tend to have a 15 rebound advantage. Even good Michigan State teams. And I kept on looking at the rebounding in this, and I was like, okay, now Kentucky's within 1. They're within 2 rebounds. It's getting to feel like maybe the Gonzaga thing. And then all of a sudden, Michigan State's up by 6 rebounds. They're still up by 5 rebounds. They're up by 8 rebounds. So that's one of the things I didn't write about tonight, but I learned that this Michigan State team is capable of team rebounding at a high level.
Yeah.
And that's another positive moving forward.
Yeah, to your point, Michigan State comes in with a big rebounding reputation, and these teams with these great rosters meet it and exceed it, usually. But not tonight. Michigan State out-rebounded Kentucky 45-38.
Hogard and Akins. I mean, those were good guard rebounding outings. And that's another Mady Sissoko thing. I don't know how many boards he ended up with, but he threw his
8.
body in there. He threw and a lot of the ones he didn't get, he put his body in a place that prevented Kentucky guys from getting it, and a guard went and got it, or a forward went and got it. Good team rebounding.
And yeah, absolutely. And Hauser with 8 rebounds. Hauser played 45 minutes. Joey Hauser, 45 minutes. Malik Hall guarded C.J. Frederick and closed distance on him. Frederick came in. He's a great shooter career-wise. 1 out of 6 from three-point range. And the one that Frederick hit was a big one. But and on that one, it was Hogard that didn't get him in transition. But Malik Hall, like you said, played some small forward defense, and it was not a problem. In the meantime, Malik Hall gets 5 rebounds. He can do better than that as a big 3 moving forward. But Michigan State just when they got a few minutes out of Hauser and Hall playing together with a small lineup, and when Sissoko had foul trouble, Michigan State was in survival mode. It's like, all right, we're down 2, we're down 3. As long as this doesn't go to 7 or 8, and we get to like the 8-minute mark, then we put Sissoko back in there. To Kohler's credit, to the small lineup's credit, and Cooper a little bit, they were able to avoid those that 8-0 run, game-changing run that could have happened while Sissoko was out of the game, like what happened against Gonzaga. I'll say this: Kohler plays 8 minutes and he was a +1 in plus-minus. Now Cooper was a -8. He was the only Michigan State player. He and Brooks were a minus. He was a -8, but he went out there, did what he could. Had a couple times where had the ball stolen from him because he didn't value it on a ball reversal at the top of the key layup, and another time he had a rebound or an entry pass or something slipped through his hands. He's got to work on his hands, but he's got length and he's got some will and he's got some athletic feet. So there's something to work with there. And he learned some lessons tonight too. Tshiebwe's amazing.
Yeah, the thing about it is you look at when you talk about the small lineup. The small lineup got a chance to check Tshiebwe. Joey Hauser got a chance to check Tshiebwe after Tshiebwe was like worn out. I think that was a big thing. So worn out to the effect that he fouled out. And early on, if Joey Hauser had to check Tshiebwe later in the first half, that would have been lights out. And but Michigan State did some nice things about moving guys around and taking advantage of that. Kentucky's got to get more. They'll get more out of Tshiebwe, but I think also Michigan State. If you look at moving forward, I would be interested to see what these two teams would look like if they met in March, which is distinctly possible. But I'm sure the whole narrative going into that game, if it were to be played, would be Kentucky has grown so much since then. We've seen that type of stuff before. But I promise you, the Michigan State, you'll have a healthy Jaden Akins, you'll have Pierre Brooks reprogrammed and probably playing at a high level, and the transition game will be better. I think Michigan State did some good things in the transition game. Calipari was upset with how many points Michigan State had in transition in the first half in comparison to Kentucky's lack of transition points. And that's not for lack of trying with Kentucky, man. That point guard is legit. And I think
Wheeler.
He is a legit point guard, a talent. We've seen some guys, sometimes in this game, there'll be a Duke point guard that'll be he's not quite a Duke point guard, or a Kansas point guard that's not quite a Kansas point guard. No, that dude is legit. I really, really like that guy. And the job that Tyson Walker did on him, Akins did on him and stuff like that was impressive. Now, he got to the rim early a few times.
5 times in the first half, and Michigan State adjusted somehow.
They made him work, and
yes.
That might be the key word for Michigan State in this entire game is adjusting. And it wasn't necessarily X's and O's adjusting. It was Michigan State physically adjusting and not losing confidence in themselves. They found
some well-timed hedges against a team that can really shoot and never hurt them, and it never killed them anyway. If they play again, I'm guessing Michigan State's is gonna be a team that both these teams will be that if they meet each other, they'll be higher seed teams. It'll be at least Sweet 16. Right. And if it does happen, Kentucky's going to get better, and I'd kind of rather take on another number 1 seed somewhere else. But by that time, I assume they're going to continue to get better because Tshiebwe is going to get in better shape. And man, for a big, strong guy, he is quick, just quick. Just right as soon as he catches it. I mean, low, quick, strong, and Sissoko was good, but I mean, as well as Michigan State played against him, I mean, the guy still goes out and gets 22 and 18. I mean, he's just a different cat. Best player in college basketball comes back. That hasn't happened in forever. and and with Wheeler, with his ability to penetrate, and he damaged Michigan State a lot in the first half. Between that point guard and that big man and those shooters and the other stuff, yeah, they're going to be pretty good. Now, as far as I like the way Hall played on Frederick. Hall can do a few more things, and he's got to be real happy with the way he played an all-around game today. And one more thing about Izzo, the blitz counter break. You know, after made baskets, scoring the old Heathcote stuff that Michigan State's done forever. We didn't see it at all against Grand Valley. Didn't see it at all against Northern Arizona. I don't think we saw it against Gonzaga, but they've been working on it to the point where I asked Izzo about it in practice a couple weeks ago, and he says, yeah, you know, we're going to get to that. And it wasn't on today until like 2 minutes to go in the first half. And boom, it was on Hall dunk. And boom, it was on Sissoko runs the lane out of nowhere. And that's the way Heathcote used to do it. Heathcote didn't have it on the entire game. He would like spring it on you. You know, and get some of those demoralizing counter shots. And Michigan State stole 4 points that way. And just push little different buttons throughout the course of the night. And Izzo was pretty good tonight, Paul.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why they did that, and one of the reasons why John Calipari, you know, he didn't come out and say this at his press conference, but he played with fewer guys than he normally would play in this. I felt like that kind of lack of transition lulled them to sleep, and you know, he was kind of trying to he was kind of a little apologetic in the press conference afterwards about, you know, we usually play with more guys, blah blah blah, you know, talk about flow of the game, and I think that hurt Kentucky. I do think it was a little bit of a lull to sleep. I think Michigan State softened them up, and then they just went Michigan State on them, because I think, you know, they weren't ready for that.
Huge win. You know, Paul, you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I was concerned that Michigan State was going to be a good team, but would accumulate a lot of losses. Could be a good team with a 1-4 record. You know, we saw that year when they lost to Kansas, UCLA, Syracuse, and everybody else. Right. And then you dig a hole like that, you better be really good to be able to dig out of it in the Big Ten. I don't know how good the Big Ten's going to be, but with a win like this, those anxieties, and there was, I mean, if you're an observer of Michigan State, if you're honest with yourself, there was going to be some anxiety whether this team would get behind an 8-ball and get itself in trouble going into the conference season, and it's a 20-game conference season. But this win, don't have to worry about that, I don't think. Firstly, because they're good. Secondly, this win is going to look great throughout the year. Villanova does not look as good. Michigan State has them on Friday. They got to stay focused. Got to take care of that one. Then you go out to the Phil Knight thing or whatever else. You go play Notre Dame. What's the other one? Who do they play in the? They play
Oregon,
Alabama.
They can play Oregon or UConn out there.
North Carolina's out there. Go out there and go for it and have fun and see what happens. Right. And then, unlike most schedules, we've not talked about this. Usually, Michigan State has like a game at the Little Caesars Arena against Oakland, or in the past when Breslin Center is being used for graduation, Michigan State goes on the road and might play a home and home, going way back, you know, like at Arizona, at UConn, at Kentucky, those type of games, at Florida. That Saturday, that graduation Saturday, Michigan State is taking off. They've got like an 8 or 9 day break. Because you know Izzo is probably concerned about that schedule, and you know how Izzo likes to get into his two-a-days during the holidays, and they've never really quite been able to do that. This year, Izzo scheduled that break in December. If you go look at it, there's no game in there. So they're going to get to that point, then they're really going to go to work, provided they're healthy. And it's going to be fun. It's November 16th or 17th or whatever, but it's basketball season, Paul, and it was beautiful today for Michigan State fans.
Yeah, almost a weight off your shoulders, because there's so much cachet with this type of game. Like, the schedule's brutal. We all know that. Michigan State could go out and lay an egg on the West Coast. It's their second trip back out there. They could easily lose some of these games. But if you come out of the non-conference season and you have this, like a game against Kentucky on there, that's something that wears well, because it's a brand program. It's just like, you know, a couple of years ago when Michigan State beat a not so good Duke team. It still looks good on the resume. It's not like a flash in the pan type team.
Who else in the country is there to talk about right now? North Carolina's number 1 or whatever? It's Michigan State. Right. They've been on the big stage twice in 5 days. The season's just starting, but it's Michigan State. It's that brand, and it's big. And Izzo's on the cusp of I'm telling you, he's going to have a Dean Smith type of ending to his career like Dean Smith did. It took Dean Smith 20 years to win his first national title. He broke through and was great at the end. And Dean Smith was able to recruit like gangbusters at the end of his career. Right. North Carolina brand was great. Dean Smith's brand was great. But Izzo, oh man, I mean, right now it's that Michigan State is it in basketball this week. Gotta give Izzo looked crazy to schedule it like this, but he looks pretty smart right now, Paul.
Yeah, and he looked good in Indianapolis here. Xavier Booker was here tonight. Gary Harris was here tonight. I mean, Gary Harris is like Indiana basketball royalty. You know, it's for having him come out and show out for his college team, to have Xavier Booker out here. You know, that makes Michigan State look really good.
Where was Xavier Booker at?
I just saw like on social media that he was out there, and then there's a bunch of other like guys that I don't know their names, but I know they're very influential in basketball circles throughout the state of Indiana. So a lot of those type of people here. This is a big event, big happening out here, and you know, I think there's a lot of people that it seems like every time people want to write Michigan State basketball obituary is when they come back and they, you know, with a vengeance. And Izzo's best teams are teams that are veteran guard, athletic, can defend. But this team has got so much defensive upside because there's not one great defensive stopper guard. There's several guys that can play really, really high quality defense.
And I didn't see that coming with Hauser at the 4 and Hall at the 3. I did not see that coming defensively, but they've been doing a good job with it. There's no question about that. Anything else, Paul?
No.
All right, for Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni from, what's the place called? Gainbridge Fieldhouse?
It's called that this
Something
year.
like that.
Next year it'll be something else.
Something else next year in Indianapolis, Indiana, with the Spartans. You've been watching the VCast, SpartanMag.com.